Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Elfelt and I'm the developer of GISsurfer. In this video I'm going to introduce you to the table of contents for an ArcGIS server. You do not need any GIS knowledge to follow along. In fact, the table of contents for any ArcGIS server is simply a series of web pages that you can look at with your browser. In order to look at the table of contents for an ArcGIS server, and in order to display any of that data with GISsurfer, you first need to know the internet address for a server. To help with that, I curate a list with over 3,000 addresses of ArcGIS servers for all levels of government in the USA, from federal to local. You can find a link to that list by browsing to my project page, which is mappingsupport.com. The screen is now showing the Mapping Support project page. Scroll down to the heading that says 3,000 plus Government ArcGIS Servers. Click to read the summary, and the first link that you see is a link to the list of server addresses that I curate. The screen is now showing the curated ArcGIS server list. Note that I have made the text large for people watching this video with a cell phone. The list has addresses for federal servers, state servers, and also ArcGIS servers for many counties and cities. This is easily the most extensive list of addresses for government ArcGIS servers that is available anywhere. If you do not see a server address for your city, then check and see if there's an address for your county. Also, I encourage everyone to read the first few pages of text, which has useful information, including how to search any specific server using a Google Advanced Search. Now let's say I'm interested in recreation data that is hosted by the Bureau of Land Management. So I'm going to search the list on BLM, and I'm going to open up the first address that I see for a server, which is this one right here. My screen now shows the top of the table of contents for this server. The word root is sometimes used to refer to the top of the table of contents. Now look at the address up in my browser bar right there. The top of the table of contents for an ArcGIS server always ends in REST services. Data on an ArcGIS server is organized in up to 3 levels. This server uses all 3 levels, starting with folder. I'm going to click on the recreation folder, open that up. This is just another web page now. Now I see a list of services. Note that each service is map server. Typically, map server data is delivered to the user's screen as one or more image files. These are PNG images, usually, and are often referred to as tiles. The data is enough to fill the user's screen, plus a bit more. If you pan the map more than just a little, then the GIS server will send more data to your screen. In addition to map server data, there are other kinds of ArcGIS data that GISsurfer can display, and I will mention those later in this video. Since we need to go down one more level to get to data that can be displayed on the map, I'm going to click the first map server choice. The screen is now showing a page that has one or more layers that GISsurfer can display. So I'm going to refer to this type of screen as the layers screen. Sometimes there are many layers, and other times you'll only see one layer of data on the layers page. As I clicked links and drilled down into the table of contents, we saw all 3 levels of organization: folders, services, and now layers. Some ArcGIS servers do not use all 3 levels. For some smaller jurisdictions, you might open the top of the table of contents and immediately see a list of layers that you can display on the map. There are several useful pieces of information on the layers page, so let's go through them from top to bottom. This line right here, you can always click on this line to navigate back up one or more levels in the table of contents. Next, the surface description here has some useful information about the layers that can be displayed. Now, the bad news is oftentimes the service description field is simply blank. There is also a link here that will display the legend, and I'm going to click that. So we see that layer 0, all that data is displayed with a dot, but layer number 1, the data is displayed different ways depending on the type of data being displayed. Also, notice that the legend describes the nature of the data a bit. So even if the description on the layers page is blank, you might find information about the nature of the data by looking at the map legend. I'm using my back button to go back to the layers page. Next, notice where it says Dynamic All Layers. This indicates that GISsurfer can change the style that is used to display the data on the map. Now, there is good news and bad news about that. The good news is that this ability to change how the data appears on the map is exceptionally useful. For line data, a GISsurfer map can change the line color, line width, or whether the line is solid, dots, or dashes. For polygon data, you can control how the fill area of the polygon appears and how the outline of the polygon appears. Now, the bad news is that the dynamic layers feature is only available for some ArcGIS data. It is up to the server administrator whether or not to turn on this feature. There is a separate video later in this series that shows you how to use dynamic layers to restyle data on a GISsurfer map. Moving along now and looking under the layers heading, we see two layers. Oftentimes there will just be one layer, and other times there will be a long list of layers. Each layer has a name and a number. The numbers for the layers are critically important. The names are not important. When I produce a GISsurfer map, I often change or simplify or clarify the layer name, but the layer number must be exactly right. Notice that each layer name is a link to yet another page in the table of contents. So I'm going to click on the first layer, and now I'm on a page with information for that specific layer. I'm going to scroll down a bit here. Notice the reference to scale. If the scale is both 0 and 0, then that tells us the data will appear at all zoom levels of the map. This data will appear at many zoom levels, but not all of them. Another thing I like to look at is whether the map has labels turned on. This layer will display labels on the map. Another thing to look at is the drawing info. The drawing info tells us how the information will appear on the map. We see the symbol that's going to be used, and this gibberish down here pertains to the label. And I'll be talking more about this kind of information in another video. I just wanted to point out that the drawing info tells you how the information will appear on the map. Now, scrolling down a bit more here, the field section is a list of the attribute data you will see when this is the top overlay on the map and you click on this data. Now, field names are important if you want to display a subset of a data layer or use the value of a field as a label on the map. If you are ever trying to do either thing, then the field name must be exactly as shown in this list. I will be talking more about this in a later video. I'm using my back button to go back to the layers page and talk about a couple more things here. One thing to notice is that single fused map cache is false. I will talk more about that a bit later. It's just an important thing for you to look at when you're going through the table of contents. I'm scrolling down here. Here's another reference to dynamic layers telling us that dynamic layers is true. I like to look at that, confirming that GISsurfer can change how the data is styled on the map. The screen is now showing a GISsurfer map link that will display both of these layers on the map. Now, I will show you how to make links like this in a later video. So I'm going to open up the map and look at those layers. My screen now shows a GISsurfer map that has both of those layers. I look at the list of overlays. Here are the two layers that we looked at in the table of contents. I'm going to zoom in on this one right here. And by the way, these are mountain bike areas that the Bureau of Land Management maintains. And here I see a trail. Let's click on that trail and see what kind of attribute data that we can see. We have the name of the area, Captain Ahab, and oh, we sure do like these web links right here. And here's a JPEG, so let's click on the JPEG and see what, whoa, that sure looks like fun. I want to go. The screen is now showing a web page from the table of contents of an ArcGIS server operated by the Washington State DNR. Again, you can always click up in this top line if you want to navigate back up in the table of contents. We see a service description. We like that. It tells us about the data that can be displayed from these layers. We see these layers support dynamic layers. We like that. GISsurfer can change how the data appears on the map. What I wanted to show you here is that the list of layers has some indentation going on. Well, what's up with that? It is only the lowest layers in the indentation scheme that actually have data that GISsurfer can display on the map. By studying this data a little bit, what we see is that these two layers here will display at certain zoom levels, and these three layers here will display at other zoom levels of the map. So if I was going to make a GISsurfer map link to display this data, I would tell my map to display layers 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. The higher layers don't actually have data that can be displayed on the map. Earlier in this video, I mentioned the phrase fuse cache, and now I'm going to talk more about that. The screen now shows a page from the table of contents of an ArcGIS server where the U.S. Forest Service has data. I scroll down a little bit. Notice the heading layers here, but the actual list of layers looks different. I'm going to scroll down near the bottom of the table of contents right here, and I see single fuse map cache is true. This means that GISsurfer cannot pick and choose which layers to display. Instead, multiple layers are welded or fused together, and that is what GISsurfer can display. Notice also this information about tile info. This is good because it means GISsurfer can display this data as what are referred to as XYZ tiles instead of typical map server images. Usually XYZ tiles display faster. A later video in this series will show you how to display XYZ tile data with GISsurfer. There's one more thing to show you on this page, so I'm going back up to the layer list. Notice where it says level 3, level 4, level 5, etc. This tells you when you are zoomed way out, you do not see much data. At the lower zoom levels, you only see one layer of data. Each of these levels refers to a different level of zoom on the map. But if you zoom in a bunch, I'm going to scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. If you zoom in a bunch, here we are level 14, you see lots more data as the map zooms in. All these different layers will display as you zoom in the map. So let's take a quick look at the data on this map. The screen now shows this fuse cache data at zoom level 15. There's all kinds of different types of information on the map here, all welded into a single image that the map is displaying. Now if I start to zoom out a little bit more, zoom out more, zoom out more, zoom out more. As I zoom out, the amount of information the map displays becomes increasingly less. And that is exactly what we saw when we looked at the table of contents. Most of the fuse cache data I have seen is intended to be displayed as a base map. And when you're making maps with GISsurfer, you have the choice of displaying data either as an overlay or as a base map. The screen now shows a page from the table of contents of an ArcGIS server operated by NOAA. Note here that the same data is available both as a feature server and map server. I'm going to click on the feature server link and open that up. And we'll see how it's different than map server. So the first difference we see is that feature server does not have a legend link. A second difference is that feature server data never supports dynamic layers. And a third difference is that feature server data is delivered to the GISsurfer map as actual coordinate data, whereas map server data is delivered to the map as images. Using my back button to go back to the layers page, typically when I see that the same data is available both as map server and feature server, I'm going to choose to display it as map server. Previously in this video, I have shown you table of contents pages for ArcGIS map server data and feature server data. The screen now shows a table of contents page for a bunch of image server data. Notice that this page lists a bunch of services. All of the services listed happen to be image server, but they don't have to be. Sometimes you will see a mix of services that include map server and or feature server along with image server. Now for map server and feature server data, we have to drill down one more layer below the services in order to get to the layers that GISsurfer can display. Now by contrast, image server data does not have layers and does not have layer numbers. When you see a service identified as image server, that is data that GISsurfer can display. The screen now shows a page from a different table of contents that lists a number of services, and notice that there is image server, there's map server, and there's feature server, all on the same page here. If you wanted to display map server or this feature server data here, you would have to drill down one more layer to get to the layers page. Now let's bubble up for a big picture thought. The screen is showing two different types of links. Both links point to the top of the table of contents for an ArcGIS server. We know it's the top of the table of contents because each link ends in REST services. The first link indicates that an organization maintains their own installation of the ArcGIS software on their own servers. Data on a server owned by a government entity is often organized with folders, services, and layers, so you can drill down through the table of contents and find useful data. By contrast, when you see a link that has the word services right there, followed by a number, and includes some gibberish like that, that indicates that the ArcGIS software is living on servers owned by Esri, and the organization that puts their data on that server is buying a subscription from Esri to do so. So Esri takes over all of the work of maintaining the actual ArcGIS server code and hosting it themselves. Now, when an organization is using Esri servers to host their data, all of the data is feature server. You're not going to see map server, you're not going to see image server data on servers that have addresses that look like that. I'm going to open up the table of contents for this second link right here, and we'll see what we see. That table of contents is now on your screen. We see a single folder with services, and as we scroll down, we see that all of the data here is feature server, and there is a ton of data. Yes, the service names are alphabetical, but other than that, it might be challenging to find useful data. It so happens that all the data here is from the U.S. Forest Service, and there could easily be information here that you would really like to see on a map. But unless you happen to know the service name for the data you want to display, I'm not sure how you would find it. Yes, you could search this web page on a keyword, but well, that assumes the keyword you're searching on was used in the service name. What in the world does AFR trail mean, and how is it different from AFR trail 2? If I click on that just to look at a random layer here, well, there's no service description, so I don't really know what this is all about. This is the end of the video showing you how the table of contents works for an ArcGIS server. Next in this series is video number 6, which will show you how to surf GIS data by telling GISsurfer to split your screen. On part of your screen, you can display the table of contents for an ArcGIS server. The other part of your screen will display the map. Click on a layer in the table of contents, and that data will appear on the map. No prior GIS knowledge is needed. In addition to the GISsurfer videos, there are also several PDF files with additional tips and examples that are not covered in the videos. You can find those PDF files by going to the GISsurfer homepage, which is GISsurfer.com. Click the menu button and go to the help page. Scroll down past the video links and you will find links to the PDF files. You can always find my contact information and links to my various projects by visiting the Mapping Support project page, mappingsupport.com. Thanks for watching. I hope you find GISsurfer to be useful.